Right. Hello and welcome to my channel. Welcome to my series called The God Universe. In this video, I am going to talk about Innerbeing learning and sharing, and also give a bit more details on what I call the difference between Adam and Eve. Okay, this is chapter 16 of the series. So in the past, I have said that you learn more from family. The Innerbeing learning happens more within the family. It's kind of weird. So let me just get a little bit more into this. In chapter 9, I said that the female form was first built, and that the male form was a copy of a female form and modified, and the difference between the male and female is the reproductive system. Okay, so now let me give a little bit more detail about that. So if you look inside the woman's reproductive system, inside the woman's reproductive organs, don't look inside them, the woman's reproductive organs, you've got uterus and two ovaries, right? For a boy, they don't have the uterus, but they do have two ovaries, and these remain as ovaries until puberty. Okay, in puberty, the balls drops into sacs and everything else we know. I'm not really concerned about that, but what it is in puberty, the boy or boys start to produce testosterone. I said in chapter 9, Formation of the Human Physical Self, that the only hormone that isn't made from crystal is testosterone. So testosterone is, you could call it synthetic hormone, I guess, because it is made directly by a boy's inner being. A boy's inner being makes testosterone from a combination of estrogen, progesterone, and FSH, right? And the boy's inner being, and also I said testosterone is the hormone that converts crystals into human cells. What I didn't say earlier, and I should have said, is girls' reproductive system have two ovaries. These ovaries contains eggs, and these eggs carry crystals. The eggs holds crystals. These crystals are the template. They are the template for the human physical form. These crystals are the hormone producing crystals in the brain that I talked about. So each egg carries 55 different crystals in a specific geometry and shape. Okay, each egg in the ovaries, and a boy also has ovaries, has the same ovaries as the girl until puberty. At puberty, the boy's inner being produces testosterone from estrogen, progesterone, FSH, produces testosterone, and this testosterone, the main job of the testosterone is to convert these crystals into human cells. So the crystals in the sacs, the crystals within the eggs, within the ovaries in a boy, testosterone converts them into human cells, right? So, and after sexual intercourse, the sperm meets the egg. So actually a sperm is carrying a whole bunch of tiny human cells. Sperm is the egg. We call it fertilization, but what is actually happening is a deposition. So the sperm is depositing a set of human cells into the egg in the woman's body. Now the egg in the woman's body still have these template crystals, right? And therefore, I also said, chapter 9, I think, forming the human physical form, I said the girl's inner being builds the zygote, embryo, fetus, all the rest of it. So what the inner being has now is a set of human cells and a set of the 55 crystals together. So the crystals will now start making hormones. So and the human cells are they are what you call seeds. The seeds for the growth and the formation for all the different parts of the human body. Does that make sense? Can you see now? So actually, fertilization is a depositing process. For a man, testosterone changes the set of crystals into human cells, deposited into the woman's body. The woman's body still contains their own set of crystals, and those set of crystals and the seedlings of human cells is the beginning of how a human body is formed. Okay, now, why have I started this? What I've mentioned here is the key things I hope you've noticed is that the seedling for the human cells into the human physical body comes from the man, and the man's inner being, and the building construction of the body is the mother's inner being, right? And one of the first things that's built is the brain and the heart, right? So let me just stop there and just check my notes. Right, I think before I carry on, I wanted to quickly talk about Harvest before I jump into the learning part. Right, so you have the girl contains ovaries and eggs, still have tiny crystal particles in the eggs, right? And the mother's inner being, builds the embryo, fetus, and everything. When at the beginning of the pregnancy, or at least throughout the pregnancy, this is the cycle of life now. So throughout the pregnancy, the mother's inner being harvests new tiny crystal particles, harvests these from the uterus lining via the placenta. Now, how did it get into the uterus lining? Every time a girl gets her period, which is when the egg that has not been fertilized disintegrates. Every time the egg disintegrates, it dissipates tiny crystal particles into the uterine lining, so that when she then becomes pregnant, these crystals are actually in the uterine wall, and the placenta is a way to now transfer a new set of human template into the ovaries of the baby. So, cycle of life. So when the girl has a period, she's dissipating those tiny crystal particles into the uterus. When she's pregnant, the girl's inner being now harvests the exact amount, like 55 crystals. She's probably looking for the perfect size, you know, perfect geometry from the uterine lining. No, they're all perfect size. It's what I'm saying is, during pregnancy for the new child, this is how those new crystals are transferred to the ovaries of that child, and the cycle continues. So I wanted to just throw that one in there before I carried on with the learning and sharing. Right. So earlier in the video, I said that most of the Innerbeing learning and sharing is from the family, right? So, and I've just described sort of how the human physical form sort of is built, right? The man is in charge of the human cells, and the man's inner being is in charge of the human cells, and the woman's inner being is in charge of formulating it. So what I want to say is that any physical deformity and attributes is any physical issues, either exponentially good or exponentially bad, you know, either a disability or an exceptional ability of some sort of physical issues, is down to the father's inner being. And any mental issues, like, you know, you might have autism, you might have I don't know, pathological avoidance, you might have severe learning difficulties like my daughter, is down to the mother's inner being. Because remember now, the mother's inner being built the embryo, the zygote embryo, from scratch. Therefore, that mesh filter limiter, she designed it. She did most of the design, and therefore, when the child's inner being now occupies it, they do the final design of it. Now, you have to think in some cases that the mother's inner being will be taking instructions of it will be taking instructions sometimes from the father on how to do the mesh filter limiter in a particular scenario that an exceptional mental ability, or, you know, a mental ability or disability will be that mother's inner being will be taking instructions maybe from the dad, or from the kid's inner being on how to design it. But what I'm saying is that the mother's inner being is the one that built that mesh filter limiter before it was occupied by the child's inner being. Okay, so then the question becomes, why? Especially in cases where there is a disability. It's quite painful, you know, like, why? And again, it is to do with learning. Within the family unit, you interact most with the family. The family are the consciousnesses that you interact most with. So if the agreement between parent and child is I said the agreement, but really what I should say is an inner being, a higher self wants, it's all about learning about their behaviors and it's all about learning their behavior and their behavior and their action in a particular situation, okay? And what I'm saying is, the most significant situation you would have will be interaction with your family for significant period of time. So if you have a disabled child, the parents, carers, significant carer, or guardians, if you like, because it's about it's not necessarily the birth parents, not always the birth parents. It's about your guardians. You've also chosen the guardians. So if you adopted someone that was even a different race, those two inner beings agreed that there will be that adoption, and they planned or were interested in knowing about their emotions in that particular situation, the interaction between them in that particular situation. So what I'm saying is, the family unit has the most significant amount of interaction, and that is where the most learning about consciousness, emotions, emotional response and behaviors, that is where it comes in. So if you had someone, if you had someone that was, I suppose I'm trying to say, use disability because that's what I know. It's that my inner being will be learning, because I am the same. Remember now, I am an extension of my inner being. My daughter is presenting her disabilities through her physical self, right? And with her being my child, I respond to her needs, and her disability causes me certain emotional reaction responses, anxiety, depression, frustration. There are certain things that her disability causes me, and my inner being and higher self are learning about those interaction from her being my child and me having to address her disability. The sort of emotional responses that gives me is something that your inner being and higher self are learning with us being family, and it's the same with everybody else. So if it was a physical disability, I'm saying that it's usually the father's inner being that's created that, because the mother's inner being just builds the child from what is the mother's inner being builds the child from the seedlings, from the human cells, seeds. And therefore you have the physical disability. The learning, the major learnings is between the child's inner being and the father's inner being. The major learnings between them is between the child's inner being and the father's inner being. Let me just check my notes again. Okay, so the major learning is between, between the child and a particular parent. The child is usually the teacher and the parent is the one doing the learning. Because does that make sense? So your inner being is learning from your child, but you can see how that makes sense, because if there was a disability, it's impacting the emotions of the parent, and so it's the parent that's doing the learning in this scenario. So we're here thinking we're teaching our kids stuff, but actually pure consciousness is learning from what our kids do and our emotional response to them. So that's where the learning are. So you're with your child in the house and you say, my God, really? Why? Why are you like this? I can't understand. Your inner being, child, your inner being is learning from that interaction. So the child's inner being is probably brought in the child to behave in a certain way. When you have behavioral problems, but there's been an agreement that I will be able to generate this kind of behavior. You see, the child's inner being and higher self have already said, I'll be able to generate this kind of behavior. So when you build the child, make sure they have, or build the child in this way, and I'll have this kind of behavior in this scenario. Okay? And so the parent, you as a parent, you don't know this. You just think, why are you like this? But the inner being is taking the true feeling, I don't want to use the word authentic because I've had enough of hearing that word. But your inner being is taking note of the true emotion that is being expressed and experienced by you. Now, I think what I do want to say is, one of the things that I was frustrated with was, oh my God, what am I here to learn? Why do I have to? This seems crazy to me. It seems crazy to me that we are here to do some kind of learning, and yet some of these learnings are difficult situations, and some people carry these learnings or this situation for life. That is something that I can't get my head around. Sometimes you see, like when is the negative side, you probably find that a lot of children with very severe difficulties don't live as long. They don't live to old age, because the learning period for the inner beings is over, and rather than carry on for the lifetime of that parent doing more learning, they just agreed that this is between the inner beings. The person doesn't know, the parent doesn't know, the family doesn't know. It's like it's time, rather than carry on that it's time to perhaps end that story. Other situations, you'll find that a lot of the learnings, most of the learnings are right up until the end of your teenage years. As an adult, you're your parents, you're not having that, the inner beings are not having those learnings between each other, because you don't live with each other. Your parents are not legal guardians anymore. You're adult, you have your own life, you have to go and find your own purpose and everything else. So the learnings, inner being learnings, happens right up until adulthood, and after that the learnings are done. data learnings are done. But this is the other thing now. So for me, rather than so my daughter had difficulties, severe difficulties, rather than her have these difficulties for life, which would mean that I would have to be in the same situation for the rest of my life and her life. The plan was for me to address that so that she can live out her own purpose as she became an adult, right? So with that, I believe that there are situations where rather than the inner beings ending the life of the child early, or whatever the decision may be or become, I believe that now there is a new way, a new method, so they can do their learning and then seek solutions. Seek solutions so that those disabilities can be reversed and addressed. So I hope this makes sense to you. But that's the end of this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.